In the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's, few characters embody the emotional weight and complexity of the series quite like Kalin Kessler.
For my first move, I summon Infernity Mirage.
Introduced as a menacing dark signer and later re-emerging as a broken man in the lawless wasteland of Crashtown, Kalin's journey is one of guilt, redemption, and identity. Through his arcs, 5D's explores darker themes than its predecessors ever dared: violence, justice, and the cost of power. His evolution reflects a rare kind of character depth for a shonen anime, a friend turned enemy turned tragic anti-hero who, by the end, comes to represent the possibility of redemption through self-acceptance and change. This is the story of Kalin Kessler, the hero, the villain, the exile, and the man trying to make peace with his past. Before the chaos, Kalin Kessler was something else entirely. Alongside Yusei Fudo, Jack Atlas, and Crow Hogan, Kalin was part of Team Satisfaction, a name now tinged with bitter irony. Team Satisfaction wasn't just a group of duelists, they were a resistance. Living in the satellite, an impoverished slum segregated from the privileged New Domino City, the four of them sought to reclaim dignity and agency for themselves and for the others. Each member had their own motivations, of course. Yusei was methodical and altruistic, Jack ambitious and prideful, and Crow driven by a sense of duty to protect children. But it was Kalin who ignited this fire. Kalin's charisma made him the de facto leader. He believed they could unite the divided sectors of the satellite, bringing a fragile peace through dueling. But for Kalin, this wasn't just about justice, it was a war. As they toppled the local dueling gangs, Kalin grew addicted to the power, seeing himself not just as a liberator, but as a ruler. Where Yusei saw restraint, Kalin saw weakness. This tension would soon boil over. One notable scene that emphasizes this growing divide is when Kalin insists they push forward with more aggressive tactics, much to Yusei's disapproval. The ideological differences were subtle at first, but then later grew to be unrecognizable. Kalin began to believe that justice wasn't just something given, it had to be taken. As Team Satisfaction claimed territory, Kalin became more vigilant. His duels became brutal, some would even say sadistic. He began enforcing order through fear, not trust. The group fractured. Jack distanced himself. Crow began to question the mission, but the most painful rift was with Yusei. Their ideological split cut the deepest. Yusei urged moderation, while Kalin demanded dominance. Then came the moment of collapse. Sector Security, which is the governing force of New Domino City, set a trap. Kalin, increasingly paranoid, suspected betrayal. When he was cornered during a raid, Kalin assaulted a Sector Security officer in the heat of a moment, and in that instant, any moral high ground he had was gone. Yusei assisted with the arrest of Kalin for the betterment of himself. During that arrest, Kalin searched for his friends, and Yusei was there, but he didn't do anything. Whether Yusei believed Kalin needed to face justice or was simply just too paralyzed by the moment, it's unclear.
How could you? Huh? Yusei, you snitch! How could you sell out your best friend like this?
You're wrong, Kalin.
Mark my words, you'll pay, traitor!
But to Kalin, it was the ultimate betrayal. The show leaves much of Kalin's imprisonment implied, but his off-screen suffering is a critical element. We know that the combination of betrayal, guilt, and incarceration shattered his mind. He lost faith in friendship, in justice, and in himself. Imprisoned, abandoned, and consumed by guilt, Kalin spiraled. In that spiritual death, the seeds of the Dark Signer were sown. Dark Signers are the antithesis to the Signers, resurrected duelists who serve the earth-bound immortals, ancient Incan gods seeking to engulf the world in darkness. They represent death, vengeance, and despair. For Kalin, of course, all three of these fit way too well. Resurrected by the earth-bound immortal Kokopakapu, Kalin becomes a general of the shadows, gone as the idealistic revolutionary, and in his place is a man fueled solely by vengeance.
Are you scared, Yusei?
His deck, the Infernities, is symbolic. They thrive when the player has no cards in his hand, a perfect metaphor for Kalin's emotional emptiness. Kalin's duel with Yusei during the Dark Signer arc is a brutal, emotional battle. Unlike traditional anime rivals, their clash isn't a test of strength. It's a cathartic confrontation between two former brothers. Kalin taunts Yusei, daring him to admit his guilt. Yusei, instead, fights with compassion and for hope. Though Kalin is defeated, his words linger. He wanted Yusei to feel the emptiness that he did. It doesn't work, but it does crack his armor. The duel is not just a climax of their emotional rift, it's also a clash of their ideologies. Vengeance versus forgiveness, despair versus hope, death versus life. Kalin is defeated physically, but more importantly, he's shown a glimmer of something that he hadn't felt in years: understanding. After the Dark Signers fall and the spirits are released, Kalin does not return to the city or to his friends. Instead, he wanders to Crash Town, which is a remote, lawless mining town ruled by dueling gangs. It's a brutal frontier where duels decided life or death. Kalin became a dueling pawn for one of the local gangs, having to duel other gang members almost daily to decide whether he would work in the mines for all of his life or send someone else to join in that fate. Until Yusei arrives to Crash Town, Kalin's been waiting for somebody to give him this sort of punishment that he thinks he deserves upon himself for what he has done. Kalin's days in Crash Town reflect a man living in penance. In Season 2 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's, Yusei gets a call from Maria, one of the duel gang's wife, about Kalin Kessler being in Crash Town. Initially, Yusei thinks this is all about trying to free Kalin so the other duel gang could try to get an advantage with their own internal politics. However, this was just a trap to get them both sent into the mines. Here in this arc, Kalin becomes something unexpected, a sheriff of sorts. He protects two children, Nico and Wes, and tries to keep the peace, but it's clear that he's still running, not from others, but from himself. The end of this arc focuses on Yusei, Kalin, and the two kids escaping the mine in Crash Town. At the end of this arc, we have Yusei and Kalin versus Lawton. Their duel with Lawton, Crash Town's brutal enforcer, is very symbolic. Lawton represents the unrepentant darkness that Kalin fears that he is, but as Kalin fights, something changes. He no longer views his past as a curse. He sees it as a lesson. His Infinity deck becomes not only a representation of emptiness, but of survival. He wins not through overwhelming power, but with clarity of purpose. This duel marks Kalin's rebirth. He no longer seeks death, vengeance, or exile. He chooses to live, to protect, and to forgive, including himself. This moment parallels Yusei's ideology of moving forward, where Kalin once stood still, consumed by regret, now steps into action with a different heart.
I only lay a hand on a woman if she lays hers on a child.
Jack too?
Kalin never truly re-enters the spotlight after Crash Town. He appears briefly in later arcs, but his journey is largely complete, and that's fitting for him. Not all redemption arcs have to end in glory. Some can end in a quiet peace. He mends ties with Yusei, Crow, and Jack. The four former members of Team Satisfaction stand united again, this time older, wiser, and scarred. Kalin's scars, both physical and emotional, never fully fade, but he learns to live with them. His arc is the most human in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's. It's not about victory or destiny. It's about making peace with your worst self and still choosing to do good. He begins mentoring others, offering advice with a calm maturity far removed from the firebrand he once was. In a show full of dragons and destiny, Kalin's quiet resilience becomes something far more powerful, a realistic portrayal of growth. In a series most known for motorcycle duels and cosmic dragons, Kalin Kessler grounded Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's in something far more resonant, the human spirit. His story reminds us that no matter how far we fall, redemption is always possible, if we choose it.